Welcome to the 5-minute walkthrough of Emergency to Opportunity, Building a Resilient Nonprofit Sector After COVID-19. I'm Karen Ball, Interim President and CEO of CCVO. We know that there's a lot of data out there around impacts to the sector. This report compiles this research to make sense of the trends and impacts that are affecting our sector now. It also looks historically at lessons learned through other recent emergencies in our province and beyond, to offer learned experiences that can help the sector with emergency and resiliency planning. Let's review the 4 main finding areas within this report. 1. Increased service demand without timely recognition and support. 71% of Alberta nonprofits report an increase in demand for services to clients and communities, and nonprofits are not always recognized and supported as primary responders. Past practice of the Fort McMurray fires shows nonprofit organizations were not engaged as participants in government decision-making and were 1 full year behind supports offered for small businesses. Our current COVID response is headed down this same path, with funding and support programs for nonprofits not being delivered as quickly as responses for the private sector. 2. Decreased revenue. Fundraising, grants, and earned income are all significantly decreased. 85% of Alberta nonprofits report a drop in revenue from fundraising and 78% a drop in earned income. This is higher than the Canadian average of 69% Canadian nonprofits seeing an overall revenue decrease and 73% a donation decrease. In Alberta, the pandemic is an additional layer to the unstable economy and reduced government investment in the nonprofit sector. Some sectors, such as the experience sector of arts and sports, have seen their ability to generate earned revenue disappear overnight and likely for the next 12 to 24 months. Fundraising from the private sector is not a viable option to fill this gap. Many organizations do not have access to federal bank loans, with 23% of Alberta organizations stating that they are not eligible for major federal emergency funds. 3. Diminished organizational capacity. Organizations are seeing their capacity diminished from working remotely, staff absences due to childcare. This is a sector that has a predominantly female workforce, events moving to the viral platform, reduced hours for staff, and difficulty in engaging volunteers. Volunteer-run organizations in Alberta were already struggling to recruit and maintain volunteers prior to the pandemic. With most volunteers being over 55, the need to self-isolate will continue to affect the capacity of the sector. A recent British Columbia survey indicates that 23% of nonprofit organizations do not think they can stay open for longer than 6 months in the current conditions. 4. And finally, transitioning technology and the impact of remote work. Only 30% of nonprofits had a plan in place to support remote work. There's a strong digital divide, with many Alberta nonprofits operating in remote areas without access to broadband technology. In addition, there are anticipated costs associated with technology and virtual support that organizations are now faced with. What does this mean? Increased demand for services from the sector will continue to grow. Organizations will cut services, programs, staff, and some will close permanently. Alberta's community and economic recovery will be impacted. As a result, the demand for nonprofit services will be even greater for years after the pandemic ceases. These services may be significantly diminished. This loss will mean significant impact to the prosperity and the health of our communities and our economy, as the nonprofit sector is a major employer and contributor to Alberta's GDP, with almost 200,000 employed and $10 billion in GDP. No single economic recovery plan will be enough. The flood and wildfires have shown us that communities must collaboratively negotiate the recovery process. Future prosperity will be built through strategies that involve government, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector. There is a policy window open right now, one that is being accessed to create strategies and policies to build economic recovery. The nonprofit sector has been the backbone in the province to respond to the pandemic and in protecting the stability and health of our communities. It is time we recognize the new Alberta Community Advantage that we can rely upon to build and strengthen the Alberta we love. We are looking for ways that we engage with you in this work over the months to come. Please join us at calgarycvo.org or hashtag Alberta Community Advantage to get involved in the conversation.